All right. Can you hear me, Denise?
I can hear you.
I still can't hear you. Oh, this is weird.
This is very strange.
Hang on. I cannot hear you. Can you maybe go to your back to your computer and see if that
Okay.
works? So I don't know what's going on. Okay. Start talking.
Can you hear
Can you
me?
hear me? What the hell? And you're not using an external mic.
No.
Oh, Jesus. I don't get it. So your headphones don't have their own mic.
No, I'm not. I don't even have them
Can you
plugged
still
in.
hear me?
Yeah, I don't even have them plugged in.
So your headphones don't have their own mic?
Yes, but I unplugged it, right? And I'm using the computer because I thought maybe it was because
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. So I'm gonna go to the live on my phone and see if I can hear you.
yes, but I
To the live on my phone and see. Okay, so if I can hear you. You can be heard on the live. I just can't
okay.
hear you.
Okay. Oh.
This is
Okay.
crazy. Be heard on the live. I just can't hear you.
Oh.
So I can hear you when I go to the live outside of StreamYard. I
Okay.
just can't hear it so I can hear you on StreamYard. So everybody on
Okay.
Facebook can hear you. You're
Okay. So
good.
that's gonna give a little bit of a
You're good.
weird
So I think what
echo.
I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the StreamYard
Okay. So
volume
that's gonna
off.
give a little bit of a weird echo.
No, it's not. I'm about to mute it.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn the StreamYard. Hang on. Okay. You should turn.
Okay.
Hang on. So. Okay. You should turn. Hang on. Are you still getting feedback?
Yeah, but I don't know why.
Denise.
Cause I. Yeah, but I don't know.
Can you hear me,
I.
Denise?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, but I don't know why. Cause I. Yeah, but I don't know.
Do you have? Are you listening to both? Are you listening to StreamYard and Facebook? Because if you're listening to both, you should turn the StreamYard volume down. Because if you're listening to both, you should turn the StreamYard volume down. Because if you're listening to both, you should turn the StreamYard volume down. Okay, that's weird. Okay, so what I need you to do, Denise,
Mm-hmm.
is I need you to go to, you're probably going to have to just go to Facebook and join the Facebook Live, and then I'll bring you in as a guest on there.
Okay.
You're probably going to have to just go to Facebook and join the Facebook Live, and then I'll bring you in as a guest on there.
Okay.
All right. So as soon as I see you, Denise, then I will bring you in and we will get this started. All right. So as soon as I see you, Denise, then I will bring you in and we will get this started. All right. So as soon as I see you, Denise, I will bring you in and we will get this started. All right. So as soon as I see you, Denise, I will bring you in and we will get this started. Okay, Denise, I see you, but for whatever reason, it's not going to let me bring you on through Facebook. This is bizarre. For whatever reason, it's not going to let me bring you on through Facebook. This is bizarre. For whatever reason, it's not going to let me bring you on through Facebook. This is bizarre. Man. Okay, so probably then there's only one more thing we can try, Denise. You can try to go back to StreamYard because Facebook won't let me bring you in. So yeah, Denise, when you come back to StreamYard, I'll bring you in and we'll get this started.
Okay, can you hear me?
This is crazy. Now I can't
Okay.
hear you.
Okay.
But they can hear you on Facebook. That doesn't make any sense. Let me try one more thing. One more situation. Okay. Talk, Denise.
Yo, test 1, test 2.
All right, I got you. This is just weird because now there are two of me. Let me. Okay. Now can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was always able to hear you.
That is, I don't know why I couldn't hear you. That was so crazy.
That was.
All right, well, we got it together now, though. We got it together.
Okay, wonderful.
That was so bizarre. But yeah, we cool.
Okay.
So anyway, how you doing today, Black woman?
I'm all right. Things are the world is the world right now. So many things are happening, and as Black folks, we just have to keep our heads up and keep moving with some with purpose, um, purpose in being Black for sure.
That's right.
Yeah. How about you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I cannot complain about anything. I got a lot of good stuff going on, so I am cool. I'm cool.
All right.
You
I
know,
like to hear that.
I woke up this morning. That's really
Hey,
that's all I need.
Yeah. You know what? We can't ever discount that.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Can't discount that at all.
at all.
So yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Um,
Okay.
this should be another hot one.
Ugh. Well, it's been real. I'm not a social media person, but I have to admit that in my, spare time, whatever that actually really means, right? When I'm on Facebook on my phone and because I discovered those reels, right? Which I,
Okay.
which I'm like, some of them I get a kick out of.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I've been noticing, right, is all of these reels of interracial couples, primarily black women and white men, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Right.
Not that I think that, all of a sudden there's this, you know, this bevy of black women that are running out marrying white men. I don't want to suggest that by any stretch of the imagination that we are seeing, um, the numbers rise, because I think that would just be, irresponsible. But what I do think is that there is some real intentionality behind showing black women and white men. It just feels like I'm being bombarded with that. And I've
Okay.
been talking to some other, black women. Obviously, this is anecdotal, but the people, some of the women that I'm talking to are feeling the same way. And then you look and you see advertisements, right? And they're black women and they're white men, and there's a biracial child. And so the question that, I think that black women have to ask ourselves is, are we being socially engineered out of black love? Like, is that happening? I mean, I think it's worth asking the question and having the conversation. Um, and in the same time that that's happening, it's not like we aren't seeing people actually write about this,
Right.
right? So in, what was it, 2019, her name is Cheryl Judice. She's I actually don't think she's a PhD, but she's at Northwestern, and she wrote, um, let me I don't have my reading glasses on. So
All right.
so I gotta look at my notes a little bit more intently here. Um, where oh, wait, where did I write it? Let me just go. Let me look very carefully here. Um, her book, what was it? Um, why it's time for black women to date. What did she say? Wait, let me just get it right. Let me get the title right, and I do apologize for that because I
That's
didn't.
fine.
I got my shorthand notes.
Tennis star Serena
Um,
Williams, Senator Kamala Harris, and businesswoman
why am
Melanie
I
Robson.
doing that? Okay, so now I can't find it. I hate when that happens. I got a whole bunch of notes, but anyway, somebody in the chat, can y'all help me, please? A sister's having difficulties today, but she wrote a book, um, and essentially it was talking about why black women should start to date specifically white men.
I saw that.
And what I found interesting about her premise is she was talking about black women, being the least married in this country. She mentions that, um, a lot of why black women may not be looking at white men as mates is because of the historical piece with them being, mass rapists of our foremothers, right? But then she goes on to say that she thought that would be interesting to look at that dynamic of Black women, again, who are the least likely to be married, and partnering with white men who are still, sort of the most dominant force in the country. So I thought that was a strange kind of position to take. It's one thing to say to Black women, well, Black women, we're outnumbering Black men, and by the way, it's only by about 2 million. That's not the end of the world. That's not gonna shake up things.
Right.
That's not gonna tip the scales, just so we put it out there. But you say, okay, we're having some challenges marrying for whatever reasons. Sisters, there are some wonderful Native American, indigenous brothers, there's some Latino brothers, but she honed in like a pigeon on white men. And that's just so freaking bizarre to me.
Yeah.
And so I don't really, I can't really grasp that, right? So you have this woman, like I said, she's at Northwestern. She's a professor at Northwestern. So she put her book out in 2019, and I remember that there were, because that was right before the pandemic hit, and I remember that there were online virtual book discussions of that like early 2020 when the pandemic hit. So you have people like her writing about it. Then you have there's a travel club, and the whole purpose of it is, the background of it is, looking at why Black women in America are being told to find love in Europe. So this is, there's this travel club. So this is this idea that, Black women, listen, you're not going to find your mate in the United States. It's not going to be with a Black man. Yes, we know you want to marry a Black man, but, sisters, it's not going to happen for you. So instead of, holding out against, all hope, go to Europe and find you someone. So those are just a couple of examples. And then, recently, what was it? A month ago, I have his name. I need better glasses. I need my reading glasses. The article that came out by Ralph Richard Barks was April 4th. Why more Black women should consider marrying white men. And he's using research from Pew. Again, sort of talking about this dynamic of, Black women becoming more and more educated, the idea of incarceration, poverty, and other things that are, render Black men, not the best choices for Black women. So it's like all of these messages that Black women are getting. It feels like I said, it feels like an attack. It feels like this is to me someone, who is still in the market to be married, because I'm single, but I am divorced, and I've been divorced for quite some time. So I would like to get married again, but it just feels like this. It feels like everyone is telling me, and I'm putting in quotes, everyone, that
Right.
as a Black woman, just leave the brothers alone and try something else. And the truth of the matter is I'm not going to do that. But I wonder if other Black women are feeling the same way. And I would caution Black women, if you are feeling like you are recognizing this this onslaught that really is talking about divesting, in from Black men, I would also suggest that Black women think very, very carefully about this. Now, listen, I'm not going to tell any sister, look, girl, don't you do it. Don't you go get you a white man. You better hold out, hold out. I'm not going to do that, right?
Right.
Because, everybody deserves to be happy. But what I am going to suggest is, don't be fooled. Don't listen to these messages where, social media, you have Black elites, Black scholars, and you know how I feel about a lot of these Black scholars. I just feel like, they're flunkies for liberals.
Absolutely. At this point.
Yeah, they're, so but understand what's really happening. At least investigate. Because the other thing that's happening, I was in trying to figure out this whole piece about, are we being socially engineered out of Black love? I think not only are we being socially engineered out of Black love, I think we are being socially engineered, sorry about that, socially engineered out of marriage.
Yes.
Because I'm here to tell you, the statistics do not support that there is a whole rack of white men out there just waiting to marry Black women.
Well, let me say this. I got a white homeboy I talked to, and he said something interesting. It was funny because we talk about all kinds of things, especially racial issues, and he's usually pretty on point. And I was just sharing with him that I had started to hear a lot of Black women say that they're being forced to date white men. And he said, well, Daryl, don't get offended, but as a white man, no one's forcing me to date Black women. So, I just think it's interesting. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of, and I agree with the whole concept of social engineering. So I understand that there's a lot of propaganda that comes to Black women to get Black women to try to turn away from Black men, to turn to anybody else so that we can continue to be divided. Right. But I thought it was really, really just, man, so nail hitting the head when he said that. He's like, so these Black women are saying, I haven't heard any other group say it, just Black women are saying that they're being forced, and I'm gonna do the air quotes, to date white men. But as he said, there are no white men who are being forced to date Black women.
Oh, absolutely not, because the statistics show, and our listeners, please check out the U.S. Census data. Statistics show that white men and white women, still marry each other, and have the least outside of race marriages. So that should be an indicator that they're not just lined up waiting to marry Black women.
Right.
And the other thing that we have to talk about as Black women in terms of this whole, marriageability, marrying Black men, not marrying not marrying Black men, is again that I think it is, giving us all of these messages about divesting from Black men, as you said, to keep us divided. But the point about leading us away from or out of marriage is also a really valid discussion point for us, because again, if we, numbers don't lie. And that's the one thing. If anything comes out of, these conversations, I think the number one thing that I would ask or implore of Black women, and that is, really look at the data. Stop thinking, talking, projecting in these sweeping statements without looking at what the data actually says. And even in looking at the data, then looking at the context of the data, because we come up with some really whack stories. Um,
Yeah.
we come up with some really whack stories, and we gotta stop doing that. But for instance, I was looking at an article that was written in 2016, um, and it's the growing racial and ethnic divide in the U.S. in terms of race, in terms of marriage, and so specifically looking at Black women age 40 to 44, 34% of us have never been married. Like, that's serious.
Yes.
And so let me give you the context of that. White women in the same age, only 7% of them have never been married.
Mm.
Hispanic women, foreign born, it is only 11%. US born Hispanic women, 21%. So somebody is telling Black women in many, many different ways that we should not be married.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody was outside telling Black women 30 some years ago, but now Black women are telling each other. So let me give,
Absolutely.
yeah, let,
Absolutely. And so we don't even think about the message of, go to college and get your education because you want to be an independent woman, because you don't want to need a man for anything.
right.
So I've always thought that that was a peculiar message, for a lot of different reasons. And again, I'm a little bit older than perhaps some folks that may be listening, but the idea of being independent has never sounded to me like this thing that was supposed to um be this bonus, right?
You're
Like,
right.
it always sounded on my ears like it was going to prepare me to be out in the world, by myself, with no intention or no focus or even no desire, because that would have waned, after I
Yeah.
have been in school for 100 years, or whatever the case may be, or after I had gotten my foot into this, particular corporate setting, or whatever the case may be. And that that it sounded synonymous to don't get married. That's really
Right.
what it sounded like to me on my ears.
Yeah.
And so whether it sounded like that on other Black women's ears, I suspect that somehow that's how it's been processed, that's how it has been expressed, because this is now our behavior,
Right.
right? This is
Right.
now our behavior.
Yeah.
And we have to be really, really, we've got to be real cognizant of all of the messages that we've
Mhm.
been given. We've got to be really cognizant of the messages that we are repeating, even
Well,
with our daughters now.
yes,
Um,
yes. All of that is important, but I think also Black women have to be careful of the messages that they're delivering to Black men. And so, what I wanted
yes,
to do was go through my own personal timeline, which is, somewhere around 89, 90. I'm coming out of college and I'm talking to these women who are in their 20s, right?
mhm.
Who, should be at the, the pinnacle of everything good. Breasts are still perky, you know what I mean?
Right,
Everything is
right, right, right.
beautiful, no kids, but for the first time, we were hearing a large number of Black women telling Black men, I don't want to get married. I'm going to wait until I'm 40 to get married and have children. And I remember thinking, well, who the hell is going to marry you and have children when you're over 40? That, like,
Yeah,
I couldn't make that make any sense. It was bizarre to me that one group, this, not Asians, not Hispanic, not white, one group, Black women would wake up and just decide we're just gonna wait until everything is almost over. The period of fecundity is pretty much over. And then we're going to decide to have children. So that I missed the part where white women were coming and telling them that, because I know it didn't come from black women, because how would it happen in 1990 and never, I mean, our marriage rate, we were still doing our thing in the 70s. So this came in the 80s. So it had to come from someplace else.
Yeah. So and just to just to tell you what the statistics are on that. So, you're talking about, being college age, and, black men are, they're thinking, setting their sights on, the next steps in their lives, which includes, can include marriage. So we're looking at that, age of 20 to 24. This is the statistics that are used. So for first marriage between age of 20 and 24, white women, almost 59% of them are getting married at that age, right?
Okay.
For Asian and Pacific Islanders, it's 41.4%. For Indian Native American, 53.5%. Hispanic, US born, it's 50.4%. And for foreign born, it's 81.3%. So women in general understand, oh, wait a minute, if I want to be married and I want to try to have some babies, forget what, the science and the technology is saying. Let's just talk about human nature, and when the body starts to develop, and when you are most capable of bearing children, what's considered, childbearing years. So every other woman, right, sort of got the same clue. But then black women between the ages of 20 and 24, first time marriage, only 23% of us fall into that, in that age category. So, there's so much that is happening simultaneously in concert, because I don't think any of this is, by accident. I don't think
Not
it's,
at all.
all of this feels very deliberate, and, like I said, working very harmoniously and in concert, because it's yielding, all of it is pointing to and yielding this result of, black women not being married and divesting, or being told we should be divesting from black men. And I want to say very specifically, being told that
Yes.
we should be divesting from black men, because the statistics, and this is another thing, we got to hold on to this understanding that the majority of black men are still married to black women, and the majority of black
Yes.
women are still married to black men. So we have
Yes.
to hold on to that very tightly, and not let, the messages that this propaganda that we hear, the propaganda that we see, these liberal scholars coming and telling us, oh, just travel to Europe, or, let's, go marry a white man, because, there just aren't enough black men. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's absolute nonsense.
Well, and it's social engineering when you hear those messages and you see that there's no real result. Like, so, you're hearing liberal media tell you these things. You're seeing the commercials, and sisters are now telling each other, but you don't see any uptick in interracial relationships between
Right.
black women and white men.
Right. There is
So
no uptick. So again, that tells you white men are not standing in line.
they're not.
Now that doesn't mean that there aren't some, on Clubhouse or whatever those places are, that, there aren't some swirler groups. Of course, we're not saying that doesn't exist. But what we are saying is that this divestment, that is being, told to us in every, from every angle, from every platform, from, you know, disguised, mask, covert, overt, right? The only thing that's really happening with that is that we're ending up by ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that black women have to pay attention to, not this manufactured disinterest from black men, because that's manufactured. Because
It's
black men
manufactured.
are still looking for black women, no matter what people say. We're still looking for each other, right? So I think that that's what they need to focus on. Focus on who's actually married to whom, but also focus on, if we want to, kind of focus on the negative, focus on the fact that there are more black women who are entering their 40s than ever before without children.
Without children,
And
yes.
that's a problem. So, we go back to 30 years ago when I first started hearing the sisters say, I'm going to wait until I'm 40 to get married and have children. That's just not working out well. It's just, that's not working out. And so what's really starting to happen, and we started to see it probably really, really, I started seeing it maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago, when that group of women were hitting that, well, I guess you want to call it a wall, when they were hitting that wall. And that wall's name, was late 30s, early 40s. And so they were hitting the wall where they basically were realizing, I wasted a lot of time and I wasted my best years, the period of fecundity. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
argument is that it anywhere from 34 to 38 that it ends. Some people think it's 40 and it's not. I think it's closer to 34. And so when we get to like 38, 39 for a first time pregnancy, and I know this is going to be hard for a lot of sisters to hear, 38, 39 for a first time pregnancy is actually a geriatric pregnancy.
Oh, I had my third child at 40. She was born at literally 41 and a half exactly. Okay.
Yeah,
And I walked in the place and they were like, oh, you do realize you're high risk just off
yeah,
the, and so, I mean, like, that's real talk.
yeah,
That's real talk. The kinds of things that they're preparing you for, in terms of, any challenges with the baby, any challenges in terms of your being able to deliver
yeah,
safely, like all of those conversations they have with you the moment you say, oh yeah, I'm 40.
right,
And
right.
so if we as black women are making choices because you want to be this superwoman in the workplace, and I don't say that with any facetiousness at all or
Yeah,
disrespect. I'm not being dismissive, because I think, you know the cool thing about the world is that there are so many different things that you can try, and you can walk amazing paths and just, unlock your brain and just do your thing, right?
right.
So I honestly don't say that with any facetiousness. What I will say though is, when we make these choices, right, we also have to understand that there's a consequence, or that there can be consequences. And one consequence can be that we look up and we're 40 plus, and we haven't had any children, and we've
Yeah,
never been married. And for the people all the way in the back, as black women, we can't blame that on black men. That can't
thank you.
be
Yeah,
that can't be, we can't fall into this conversation that, well, there just aren't enough good black men. We only outnumber black men by 2 million. um we can't continue to rely on these conversations about the incarceration rates, and not that those don't have an impact, um on,
well, but
women
it's
needing
it's
men.
not a it's not a significant
It's
impact
not
though.
right, it's not
Yeah,
significant.
yeah,
you know what 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 perhaps is significant is what we decide at 40 we want in Black men. So if we at 40 want Black men who, have 15 degrees, make $100 and something $1,000 and blah, 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 all of those things, well, then that becomes problematic, because the numbers don't add up. Because first of all, we're talking about what, 1%, 2%, somewhere no more than 5% of Black men that are making that. I mean, because we're Black people in America. Like,
Yeah.
let's keep it real.
There's just not a lot of us making the six figures. So
Right.
what they're looking for is a unicorn. And here's the sad part that they don't want to. A lot of sisters don't want to accept the ones who are looking that hard and making those demands. Half of them are not unicorns, and it's probably higher than 50%. But here's some things that really need to be discussed and kind of laid out there. As a single Black man over 40, here's what I'm starting to see. And it's a little, at first it was confusing, but now I know where it comes from. Now it's just a little scary. I'm starting to see women who are 45, even 50, who are still saying that they want to have children. Yeah. Yeah. And my question.
I was trying to fix my face.
Look, that's why I froze, because I was making sure. Yeah, so they're 45 plus, some even 50, saying that they want to have children. And I don't want to be rude or crush anybody's fake dream, but yeah, I had to say fake dream. But with whose womb, right? And why do you have the expectation that a man over 40 is going to walk through that risky, dangerous terrain with you? That's problematic.
It's
problematic.
From jump, it's problematic. First of all, Black women, even in our 30s, you go into a hospital to have a baby, okay, I had to take a moment, because that is not our safety is not the number one priority of the medical institutions across the country. Okay,
That's
we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, let's be
real
honest.
talk.
Yeah,
and the statistics are showing, specifically with I wish I had thought to pull those numbers, but there was a report that came out earlier this year, or may have been last year, end of last year, where the numbers, you would think that the numbers regarding women and for lack of a better word, medical mishaps regarding childbearing or childbirth would occur more often with women who are of a lower socioeconomic status. And that is not the
that
case.
is not the case.
It is happening more with Black women who are more affluent, more educated, and even married.
Yes.
So then that begins to beg the question, what else? What are the other factors that are going on with Black women who are educated, affluent, that when we go in to have children, we are at higher risk of having complications than Black women who have fewer resources? Like,
Yes.
that's a real question.
Well, but it's even before you get to childbearing, because if we look at women who Black women, late 20s, early 30s, there's a higher occurrence of radical hysterectomies. Okay, and so these are things that I think, and this is why I always say, Denise, I always say Black women need to have their own movement. Black women need to do their own thing, because then Black men can get behind that, because there'll be less finger pointing, accusing us of all this bullshit matriarchy, which we aren't enjoying. That's just not real, especially since the Black community by and large is a matriarchy. But if Black women did their own movement, then they can start to really deal with specific health concerns to Black women, specific to Black women. Because when we start looking at, again, before childbirth, the radical hysterectomies, we start looking at all the things that occur, and I'll say this, I've never said this, out loud. My son's mother, when we were in that room about to deliver, I had to fight for her and my child. And I'm not going to talk about the details because it's still a little disturbing. Plus, I just don't want to put all that out there. But the point is, she was a single mother. We weren't together. We weren't, married or whatever. But what if I was not there? What if I just wasn't present?
Yeah.
Who knows what the hell would have occurred? I
Yeah.
had to fight to the point where I literally had to say some choice words and get the whole delivery room to be quiet and listen to me, to let them know both of them were going to come out or nobody was coming out.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that there's some things going on in there where that situation is sometimes very, very hostile to Black women. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is that a lot of sisters think, oh, I can just do this by myself. That's some real rocky terrain to go through the pregnancy, to deliver the child, and then to raise a child on your own without the influence and presence of the child's father. Whew, it's problematic.
I mean, one of the things that, with all of this fluidity and, different kinds of, family makeups and everything, which everybody to each his own, and certainly everybody has a right to pursue whatever family makeup makes sense for them. But the one thing that I would say, particularly, talking specifically to Black women and this idea of doing it alone, is it really kind of makes no sense when you think about the fact that, it takes male energy and female energy to create children. Like, it's, I mean, it sounds so basic and elementary, but it's very profound. So if it is required to create that, then why would it not be required to continue to raise these little beings? And the fact that you may have to do it alone doesn't mean that it's still an ideal situation. That somehow you're going to be able to make up for not your child not having a his or her father present. Like, that's a real, that's something that we as Black women have to stop telling ourselves and stop telling each other, that well, I can do it by myself. We can do a lot of things by ourselves. We can do a lot of things. It doesn't mean that those are the best things for us to do. And again, I would never tell a sister, hey, you know if you don't have a father or someone present in your life that you are going to have you want to have a child with, then you're out of luck, don't have a child. I would never say that. But what I am saying is that we have to think about all of these different factors. And let me just say, I am a single mother. And I have not done it by myself. My sons and my daughter, I've not done it by myself. So I want to be very clear about that. So I understand the dynamic of being a single mother. But I also understand that it was very, very important for me to have my children's fathers in their lives, and for us to co-parent. So I don't want to, give this message like I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, if you don't do it this way, it's so I don't want to come across as at all being hypocritical, because
Sure.
that's not where I'm coming from at all. We, that male energy is definitely needed. But as we were talking earlier, Daryl, this idea of um the messages that we've been told that we receive, then somehow get interpreted in an entirely different way, and then we spit this out to Black men, and we just, it's, if we're 40 and we're never been married and we've never had children, this is not an issue of Black men. It's not an issue of a shortage of Black men. It's an issue of the various choices that we as Black women have made. And I think of, and I don't want to betray my son, but I have a 23-year-old son, and whom I adore. And we were talking a couple of days ago, and one of the things that he's revealed to me is he's getting a little bit just a little bit uneasy, because he is getting ready to finish college. He wants to be married. He wants to have a family.
Yes.
And it was and trying to find someone who is ready for that has not been easy. And my son, God bless his heart, my son has had 2 girlfriends. So ladies, again, anecdotal, but we need to hear this.
Yes.
Yes, there are Black men who are not running out here, trying to test out every Black woman they come across.
Right. Well, let me do this too. It's always important for me in every arena, every time I speak, when we start talking about that fake, anyone mentions the fake shortage of Black men, let's go through the actual numbers. As far as prison is concerned, 45 million Black people, roughly 21 to 22 million Black men, 22 to 23 million Black women. Out of 22 million Black men, in order for there to be some kind of real issue with prison, what would you say, 20%? Because it's not 20%. Right. Even if it's 10%, that would be a problem. It is not 10%. It is less than 5%, and has been since I've been checking it for the last 20 years. Yeah. There have been less than 1 million Black men in prison. Now, is that too many? Is our representative number high based on being 13%? Blah, 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 blah. All that bullshit where you play with the numbers, can make it look goofy, but there are less than 5% African-American men in prison. As far as white women, interracial relationships defined by a Black man and a white woman have never been over 250,000. Right? So, less than 2% or about 2%. And then as far as the whole down low homosexual, first off, no one knows who's down low because they're down low. But homosexuals,
right.
Homosexuals account for 16% of the entire population. So we got to stop pretending that somehow, the Black community has 169,000%, or they're all in the Black community. They're all spooky. So all of that bullshit has to go away, which I know is hard for some sisters, because then that means that they have to look and say, well, what am I doing?
Right.
What choices did I make? And who am I that the men just don't want me? Because that's really, really what we have to deal with. And that's not to say these are bad people, but if you are a woman over 40, you cannot be making the same demands that you were making at 22. Because if you're over 40, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have children. And the other thing that we have to talk about that I know is going to also make Black women mad is this whole thing of asking for a provider. If you're over 40 and you want a provider, you have failed at life.
Well, I think
I'm just saying.
Right. So I probably, as a woman, I probably would put it a little bit differently.
Sure, I'm sure.
So, but what I would say is that you bought into the bullshit Cinderella story.
Yes.
And it's like, fairy tales. Are we? My mother. And I so appreciate this about my mother. My mother never allowed me or my brother to read fairy tales. She wouldn't read them to us.
Hmm.
One, because she thought that they were really cruel to children.
Oh
Like she
wow.
was like, why would I? They're putting kids in
Okay.
the oven. Why would I read this? Why would I read this to my?
Okay.
Why would I
I
read this
get
to
that.
my kids?
I get that.
Um, so that was the first thing, but also because she says she just didn't want us buying into this idea that you know life was supposed to absolutely go a certain way, or just these things, these fantastical things were supposed to happen to us, and
Yeah.
and that's and that isn't the same as when you hear people talk about, well, I'm putting my children out at 18 because I want them to understand the value of hard work and things like that. No, it's not it's not the same. That's not
Yeah.
what my mother
Right.
was
Right.
saying,
Right.
but
Yeah.
really
Because
just
that's kind of
not,
crazy.
right, not wanting us to buy into this fantastical you know stuff that white people make up, and it just really has no real context to what it means to be black in this country.
Yeah.
And so as black women, we have bought into the this fairy tale of wanting to be a princess, of wanting to be you know taken care of in this very sort of almost opulent way, and it really doesn't make any sense. And so for me, when I'm talking to friends and I'm talking to the kinds of things that they're telling their daughters, because we have daughters, we're of the age now where we have daughters who are trying to be out in the world and looking for mates. It's just really take remove all of that.
Yeah.
Just remove all of that. Redefine what, if you want to be a princess, redefine what that looks like for black people, right?
Yes.
For
Yes.
me, if the idea of having someone who adores me, right, who really is into me, and like what is it that I like, what is it that I'm interested in, someone who is checking out my mind, like redefine for ourselves what does that look like, and what does that mean, and stop chasing after these eurocentric kinds of standards. And that also plays into this idea of why we think that there are not enough black men for us to marry, because we're also incorporating these European standards, again going back to how much he has to make, and all of this. I think about my grandmother, and she and my grandfather had 8 children, and they were poor.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, every single story, my grandfather is deceased. He died when actually the same year I was born. Every story that my grandmother recounts to this day is about how wonderful my grandfather was, and how amazing he was, and
Nice.
just and how funny he was. And this was a man who had not graduated from high school, had to work 2 or 3 jobs to piece together a living. My grandmother stayed home and raised their children. um my grandfather was a janitor. He had been a school janitor. He was um a woodworker. He had done he was also a Pullman porter. So there so this black man was out there rolling his sleeves up every day, doing the best that he could to come home to his wife and his 8 children, whom my mother tells a story that was she and her sister, her older sister, would always say, do you think mom and dad would ever get a divorce? And they would say, probably not. And then they would ask each other, well, if they do, who are you going with? And they would say, oh, we're going with daddy. We're going with daddy because my grandfather, I'm told, was just such a gentle soul.
Yeah.
So we continue to place standards on black men that have really nothing to do with who
With black
black men,
men.
right?
Nothing to do
And
with us.
yeah, it has nothing to do with
Yeah.
black men, and it's all about these standards. And that's actually one thing that I did notice in watching some of these shows, YouTube shows of or even these reels that these and it's usually what's funny to me is that it's usually the black woman who is like the feature in these shows. Like it's not the white husband that's like, hey, here's my black wife, and right. it's
Right.
it's it's really the black woman that's being featured. But what I find so interesting about it is that it always seems to me to be promoting a lifestyle, right? Rather than a relationship.
That's right. That's well, and that feeds into all the other propaganda, because one of the things that black men are starting to discuss are all the things that are coming at us from black women, and when you start talking about relationships, a lot of these single black women are talking about lifestyle, not love. They're talking about lifestyle. They're talking about, I don't want to work anymore. I want to provide her. I want to protect her. I want to make sure I get a man who travels. You got to have a passport. I need to be able to go to dinner on a regular basis. I don't do coffee dates. Like, all of these things are about lifestyle, and they have nothing to do with relationships. And then these sisters are wondering why they're not either finding relationships or sustaining relationships. But it's hard to do when you're focused on things that don't have anything to do with relationships, and you're coming to black men with things that don't have anything to do with black men. Like, I mean, as you know, as a black nationalist, a black woman can't, or any woman can't, come to me and talk to me about patriarchy. Like, we're not having that conversation, because I've had, not that I've dated white women, but I've had white women try to engage in those goofy ass discussions about black men. This one Indian woman, and I really regret not cursing that bitch the fuck out. She's from. I'm getting mad thinking about it.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah, because she's from India. And we were
Mm-hmm.
at a bar and we were just having a discussion. And she tried to launch into this whole diatribe about how black men subjugate black women and blah, blah, blah. And I said, baby, have you been to India? What has India got to do with it? I'm like, first off, you guys hate your skin color. There's more skin lightening there than ever before. And you Indian women are subjugated to shit. But she wanted to have this conversation about black men and black women. So I'm just like, I'm not really trying to have those conversations with black women. Like, I'm not on a date, because I'm not oppressing you on the date. I'm not trying to be your daddy and
Right.
and beat you down with patriarchy on the date. But these are the things that have to be discussed, because these are things that are destroying our relationships. Not just, and not to say that black men don't have bad behavior. Some of us do. Some of us are still out there trying to be a hoe in our 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
and that's, and
Yeah.
try out all the women, and
Right.
that's a problem. But that's always been a problem. But all of this new bullshit, this propaganda, this anti-black male propaganda has to be dealt with, and it has to especially be dealt with when it's coming from black women, because they're creating something. We're not creating; they're buying into something that has been created specifically to make sure that they don't get married.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about, bad behavior of black men, what's really interesting is that um it's actually quite ironic. And that's that, when you have these conversations of intersectionality, right? Intersectionality actually excludes black straight men.
Straight
Like
black men specifically.
there's
Yes.
no place for you to come to that circle, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no space for you, right?
Right.
So that means that nothing that goes on in your life, right, can be attributed to the fact that you are black. Now, conversely, the problems that black women purport to have with black men, they attribute to them not being men, but being black men.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we're talking out of both sides of our necks.
Yes.
And liberalism, um you know uh black scholarship that has no empirical data has allowed, and obviously feminism, the big key,
Mm-hmm.
has allowed black women to function in this paradigm where, like I said, you can have this thing of intersectionality that excludes straight black men, that ignores black men's blackness,
Yes.
but then everything that we have a problem with regarding black men, we attribute it to them being black and not just men.
That's right.
So,
Well,
just
so
real. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, just to take it back to the whole premise of tonight's show, talking about black women being engineered out of marriage. I think that we need to have this discussion more. We black women need to be talking about it more because black women need to start identifying for themselves what's going on with the propaganda, not thinking that everything is organic. It is not organic, black women, for you to be running around in your 40s saying you want a provider. It is not organic for you to be making $40,000 a year and ask a man who might be making anywhere from 40 to 70 to provide for you, to travel with you, to do all of these things that you don't have the lifestyle to do yourself. It is not organic. This is part of these messages that are coming to you. I mean, this isn't you. It's not, and that's not to say that you can't travel. It's not to say that some of you can't find a man who will allow you to stay at home. It's just that for you to run around asking men on first dates to provide for you and travel and pay for it, you sound crazy as shit. Because even if a man can afford it, has the means, you are a stranger. Stop that. Stop that. It's not productive.
Yeah, it's not productive, and then we have to, I go back to, what is it that we really want? Do we want this thing that Europeans, we think that white women have? Excuse me. Sorry
Bless
about
you.
that. Thank you. Do we want this thing that we think that white women have, or do we want meaningful, productive, giving, loving relationships with a black man? Like, is that what we really want? I know that that's what I want, and I'm not out here, I'm not out here on a bunch of first dates. But I know I'm not asking for the first date to be at, Fogo de Chao either.
Jesus. Jesus. Yeah. But that's what they're asking from us. And I've just gotten to the point, and I'm doing a show tomorrow. I'm going to launch 4 Hour Brothers tomorrow night. And these are the things that I want brothers to hold fast to. Don't let people, don't let these women, especially, if you think they're cute and think something's going to happen, convince you to take them to some $100, $200 dinner on the first date. These are strangers. Pay a bill, but invest in a mutual fund. Play the lottery. Shit, it's your money. Buy some sneakers. I don't, it's your money. But stop doing this for strangers who might not even like you.
Right. Might not even like you.
Might not even like you. And so all of these things, in addition to the messages that we see in these commercials, are subliminally influencing black women. And so, to go back and let's, do these final comments, to answer the question, are black women being engineered out of love? Yes, in so many ways. The black women are being bombarded with so much propaganda that they are absolutely equipped to destroy any possibility of relationships with black men because they're getting the messages that they're not even paying attention to or understanding, and then they're giving black men messages that they're not paying attention to and understanding, but in real time it's destructive. It's destructive. Doesn't make black women bad people. It's not all black women. I'm just trying to run through all the
Right,
disclaimers.
right,
But
right.
it's
All the
happening.
disclaimers.
All the disclaimers, but it's happening and it's got to stop.
It's got to stop for sure. And as we said earlier, um, the message was are black women being socially engineered out of black love? Well, as we've discussed, it's not just out of black love. We are being socially engineered out of marriage because um, we are divesting. Um, these conversations are telling us to divest from black men, and what we're really doing is divesting from the collective, because we're not even able to contribute in that way as partners, as mothers, if we are finding ourselves at 40 and the majority of us have never been married or never had children. And again, those are very
Yeah.
personal things, but if we say that those are the things that we want and we are pushing them off because someone told us that it was, while every other woman is
Going
saying,
for it early.
go for it. He wants to marry you at 23, go for it. And you can do that career after the child. Like, those are the kinds of things that other women are saying. So if we're the only woman that is not saying that, then we ought to look at that.
That's right.
The results show that it's not simply that we are not in in black love, but we're not in any love, because
At
again,
all.
white
Yeah.
men, that, as you said earlier, I like that when the phrase you use, there's no uptick
Yeah.
in white men and black women
There's
marrying.
there's there's just not. And people can say what they want based on what they see, but
Yeah.
it's just not happening. So, once again, I mean, powerful show. Thank you, Denise. And we got to keep pushing. And I'm
Got to
gonna
keep
lock.
pushing.
Yeah, I'm gonna lock it down and do For Our Brothers tomorrow night. And
Okay, I'm gonna be there watching.
all right, cool. Thank you, sister.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you,
all
Warrior.
right. Take
Appreciate
care.
you always.
Absolutely, absolutely. All
Peace.
right, peace.